The silence in the house was deafening, a stark contrast to the constant hum of her presence that had always filled it. Lauren, my wife of 7 years, had uttered those dreaded words, "I need space," a month ago, her voice flat, devoid of the warmth I'd grown accustomed to. It was a Friday night, much like any other, until it wasn't. One moment we were discussing dinner plans, the next, she was packing a bag, her eyes avoiding mine as she dropped the bomb. I'd asked, of course, what was wrong, if I'd done something. She'd just shaken her head, not meeting my gaze, and said she needed to think. "Think about us, about her," she'd said, and walked out. The first week was a blur of confusion and hurt. I replayed our life together, searching for cracks, for the signs I'd missed. Had I been so wrapped up in my own world that I hadn't noticed her drifting away? I worked my carpentry job by day, the rhythmic pounding of my hammer on wood doing little to quell the turmoil inside. At night, the house echoed with her absence. I cooked for one, ate in silence, and stared at the empty side of the bed. I became a ghost in my own home. Then the anger set in, slow and insidious at first, then building into a raging torrent. How dare she, to just up and leave, leaving me dangling, suspended in uncertainty? Did she think I was some kind of doormat, someone she could just put on hold while she figured herself out? I poured my frustration into my work, taking on more projects, working longer hours, my hands raw and bleeding by the end of the day. I started hitting the gym, turning my pain into muscle, the weight lifting a tangible way to exert my rage. She came back a month later, on a Sunday evening, as though nothing had happened. She walked through the door, suitcase in hand, a nervous smile on her face. I didn't rush to greet her, didn't offer a hug or a kiss. I just stood in the living room, watching her, letting her feel the weight of the silence. "I'm back," she said, her voice hesitant. I missed you." I stared at her, the words forming in my head, the anger still simmering beneath the surface. I didn't say a word, just gestured towards the living room, and watched as she looked around. It wasn't the same living room she'd left behind. During her absence, I had slowly but meticulously transformed it. I'd pulled up the old carpets, exposing the beautiful, dark hardwood underneath. The walls had been repainted, a cool, calming blue replacing the bland beige that we'd had before. The old, worn furniture had been replaced with sleek, modern pieces. The entire space was unrecognizable. I had rebuilt it. I had rebuilt myself. But it was what was in the center of the room that made her gasp. I had taken the photos, the framed memories of our life together, and lined them up in the middle of the room, running from the floor up towards the ceiling. But there were only photos of me, the photos of her all cut out of the pictures. I had removed her from our shared history, leaving behind gaping holes in what we'd built together. She stared at the wall, at the empty spaces where her face should have been, a silent realization dawning in her eyes. The nervous smile faded, replaced by a look of shock and dawning horror. She tried to speak, to offer an explanation, but the words caught in her throat. "Where were you, Lauren?" I finally asked, my voice low, dangerous. "While you were doing all that thinking, where did you spend the last month?" She hesitated, her gaze darting around the room as though searching for an escape. She opened her mouth, closed it again, her cheeks flushing. She then offered a lie, saying she stayed at her sister's place. I smiled a cold smile. "That's interesting," I said, pulling out my phone. I showed her a picture, one I'd acquired with a bit of digging. It was a photo of her, not at her sister's place, but on a beach, laughing with another man. I'd found him, too, a guy from her work, some smarmy finance bro with a designer watch and a fake smile. She looked at the photo, her face drained of color. She knew she was caught. It's not what it looks like," she stammered, her voice trembling. "Oh, I think it is exactly what it looks like, Lauren," I replied, my voice calm, almost gentle. "You wanted space. Well, you got it. You got yourself a new guy, a new life, didn't you? Go have it." She sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face, the weight of her actions crashing down on her. I watched her, unmoved. I felt nothing for her anymore, all the hurt, the love, the anger had all burned away, leaving behind a cold, empty space. I walked past her, out the door, leaving her sobbing in the middle of the room. I drove to the address I'd found for her new lover. It was a swanky apartment building downtown. I waited, parked across the street. When I saw him leave, I pulled up, blocking him into the driveway. He looked surprised, then his face turned arrogant as he recognized me. "You must be Lauren's husband," he said, smirking. "She told me about you." That was enough. I erupted, grabbing him by the collar and pulling him out of his car. He was taller than me, but I was stronger. I punched him, hard, right in the face, and he crumpled to the floor. I kicked him, again and again, letting all the rage I'd bottled up pour out. He was no match for me. "Stay away from my wife, you piece of shit," I yelled, my voice hoarse. "Stay away from my life." I left him there, gasping for air on the cold concrete, his expensive clothes stained with dirt and blood. As I walked away, I felt a sense of release, of satisfaction. It wasn't the most mature way to handle things, but I didn't care. Over the next week, I watched and enjoyed as I learned of the aftermath. His career was ruined. Lauren had been fired from her job for the affair and for her poor performance while she'd been distracted. He had a black eye, a broken nose, and the entire ordeal had been caught on security cameras. People had seen his face on social media, a video had gone viral. He tried to deny it all, but the truth always comes to the surface. He'd lost his job, his friends, and his reputation. He became a pariah, a cautionary tale. The world he had built for himself had come crashing down around him, just like I'd wanted it to. As for Lauren, I never saw her again. I filed for divorce, and she didn't even try to fight it. I had taken control, and I had won. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it was no longer consuming. I had learned that even after the greatest losses, there was a way to reclaim your own story. I had rebuilt my life, and it was stronger than before.